tātou marae huri noa, te rohe o te Arawa, tēnei mātou e tangi mō te atea ki a rātou. Reira koutou kei te wahi ngaro, haere, whakangaro atu. Hoki mai ki a tātou te hungora, tēnei ka mihi ake ki a tātou i rungi ngā kuatanga o te wā, o tira tēnei te karanga o ngā roto moana kia mātou ki aro atu ki ngā kuatanga i rungi o tātou roto moana. Reira tēnei ka mihi ake ki tēnā o tātou. Kia tīmata pai ai tō tātou hui, ka tukuna tu te te inui ki te rungarawa. Kia nui tātou. A tūtawa mai i runga, tūtawa mai i raro, tūtawa mai i roto, tūtawa mai i waho. Kia tūtawa ko te Māori tū, ko te Māori ora ki te katoa. Whānu, hara mai te toki, haumie, hui e, tāi e. Kia ora and welcome everyone to our meeting for September. Initially a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed, and also a reminder that all present that local government decision making affords no protection to members, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. Noted. Kia ora. Okay, we've done our opening karakia. Firstly, a couple of introductions. Nō reira tēnei au ka mihi ake kia Darren. Nau mai hara mai Darren. Ko Darren te tumoa ki hou o te tarati o ngā roto moana o Arawa. Reira tēnei ka mihi ake kia koe o tira, kia o whakapapa kia tapuika, kia tūhaurangi, kia Ngāti Whakaua, ki Ngāti Umutahi, tēnei ka mihi ake. So we welcome Darren Bean here today. Darren is the new CE for the Te Arawa Lakes Trust. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, please.
Tēnā koe, arapeta, tira tātou e huhu mai nei tēnei rā. Kei raro e te tūnei o te whare e tū mai nei. Tēnei ka mihi atu kia koutou. Ko Darren Bean tēnei, uri tēnei, no te Arawa waka, mai maka tū ki tōngai rero. Nō reira, nōku te honore, kia te tū mai, kei roti te kaupapa, ngā kaupapa nunui mō tātou nei roto moana o te Arawa. Nō reira, e te manukura, tānia tēnā koe, o tira koutou, e puhu mai ni tēnei, tēnā koutou. Lovely to be here, thank you, it's my first one. I'm going to take a watching brief and just sit on the sidelines and just see how it all rolls. I'm really excited about the role. There's next year we celebrate 100 years of the Te Arawa Māori Trust Board and the legacy organisation of Te Arawa Lakes Trust. So it becomes a really important time for us to collectivise and to think about what the next 100 years looks like and how we can ensure the health and well-being of our lakes and of our people. So I'm really thrilled to be in the role and provide as much support as possible, and look forward to spending some time with each of you.
And the second introduction is to a new member, TALP representative to Mariana Terangi. Tēnā kūkas.
Tēnā katoa. Neira he mihi mai hoa kia koutou. Yes, new to this side of the table. I'm usually at the back advising these lovely people here. So kia ora, nau ngā mihi kia koe tēnā reikura, kia koutou, kia ora.
Pai, tēnā koe. Okay, whānau, apologies. We've got one for lateness from Councillor White and also an apology from Helen Craig. Are there any other?
An early departure midday.
Okay. All right. Are there any other apologies at all? Carl? Could I have a mover for those apologies, please? Councillor White. Arawa mai. Okay, we'll move on to the public forum. And we have Te Kura Mea Karere here today to share an innovative idea on how we might be able to reduce lake levels. Oh, there you are. Kia ora, bro. That's me. That's you.
That's me. Got everybody. All right, so thank you.
In the hot seat, ever.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm a concerned resident in Rotorua, and back in June when we had our community meeting, we were given a few options. One of them was adapt, another one was be resilient, and I stood in that meeting and I kind of thought, actually, I think there's got to be technology that helps us. I'm that kind of person that will not only just put ideas out there, but I'll take some time and do some research. And so I did. I kind of thought, actually, what would Elon Musk do if he was sitting in this room? And that was my thought, is actually, he'll be the kind of person that not because he's rich, but because he's got an out of the box kind of mentality to kind of fix things. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to give this a go. I took 6 weeks off work and I put this report together as a concerned resident. And here I am today, just wanted to share a little bit about it. Firstly, I do want to say, and excuse me, but it sucks to be you to make these decisions for everybody, because you're not going to make decisions that makes everyone happy. And this report, I just hope that this report will give you some information that will help you make those decisions. My expectations is that you take this report and say, okay, we're going to do this. And my expectations is that you read this report and say, actually, now let's make some informed decisions based on some of the data that I've presented here. And all I've done is I've taken some of the material that was presented at the hui that we had on in June out of the community, and I just kind of looked at the data and I thought, actually, there's some stuff here that makes for interesting reading, but historically puts us in positions that I don't think that we want to be in. And so in front of you, if you have them, two reports. One of them is the main report that I presented. Should I sit? Fine. And I'm pressing forward because I've only got 2 minutes. But the main one here is that some of you would have received this report already. Yep. And so we can probably mark this as read, but there is an additional part in here that Te Arawa Lakes Trust asked me to put in here, was actually the scaling down the amount of evaporators being used, and that's on page 49. And so there's just a couple more examples in there of what it would look like if we use less evaporators. And I've added in 10 and 20 because there's a point when using this technology where it becomes counterproductive. And I said to our people this morning, it would be like mowing a golf course off a hand mower, right? You get so far, you look back and it's caught back up on you. And so there is a point where actually where we go too small, and then it becomes a waste of money. And so and really it becomes what are your goals? Is the goals to get the water down as quickly as possible, because then the easy answer is they use a lot of machines. But if it becomes about sustainability, then some of the decisions that you're going to have to make will be, okay, how many evaporators do we use? And so that really is the additional kind of changes that I've made to that main report. But for those of you, I'm not quite sure if everyone has received actually the additional supporting data. Now, that's the one I want to really focus on today, because has everyone read this part here, the additional supporting data? For those of you who received the main report.
Main report.
You got the main report. Okay. So let's mark that as read, and then let's have a look at the additional supporting data, because this is the data that I think really makes for interesting reading, because of what it shows us from historical data is that one of the things that I think that I don't really want us to do is become complacent because it's summer and the lake levels are dropping, because that's going to happen. Historically, it shows that it's going to go down, and we're going to head into a period of time where it could go down quite a bit. But historically, when you look at this data, and if you look on page, I believe it's the last page. If you look on page 7 of the additional data, you see a table that I've put together there that has some circles and some yellow lines there. Now, those yellow lines represent periods in time when there was the ENSO period. ENSO is the El Nino weather patterns, and so we have 5 major El Nino periods over the last 50 years or something like that. And those are them. Back in 2016 was one of the hottest years that our country experienced. And so I've put that on there. It also on their table, I've also highlighted areas of circles. This makes for interesting kind of analysis, really, because what we see here, the trend historically is that we see rise in lake levels followed by subsequent decline, followed by a re-rise. And that's the historical data that I really wanted to present at this table today, is that yes, the lake will go down, but the trend is, and historically, the trend is that we see a re-rise. And if you go back to the main report and you look at some of the photos here, right? If you look at the photo on the main report, let's go to page 17 of the main report. There's not much room for re-rise before we lose those state highways. But because even if you look at this on page 15 of the main report, you see the highway there. That photo was taken when the lake was almost at its peak. It still hasn't peaked in that photo.
Yeah.
Right? And we were talking about at the time of the hui, we were talking about almost a 600 mil until the bridle gets breached, and then you start to go down to Lake Rotorua. We don't have 600 millimeters in this photo before we lose the road. Just past that post is that's where the fire station is. And beyond that is the photos that we see on page 17. Is that if that bridle gets breached, we've lost the road, we've lost our fire service. Because 600 mil in that photo means that their roads underwater. And so what does that mean? Because the lake levels are going down, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, I want them to go down, but historically the trend is that it goes down and it re-rises. It's something that's happened multiple times over here. What we see up until the last when the lake was at its highest back in the 1970s, was a period of time at that stage, according to the data, there was a period of time over 20 years where it was where the lake was in a level we would call high level, and then it dropped down into almost for the next 50 years in normal. We're at the start of a high level. The rise has taken us back to the start of a high level. And so if we get a re-rise, the cost of that re-rise is going to be, I don't know. That's why you get paid the big ones. But I don't know. But I just know that if we get a re-rise, then the impacts that we're seeing now will almost be minimal compared to the impacts that we see if we get a re-rise. And that's what I really wanted to put on the table, is an understanding that there's a trend. The rise is followed by a subsequent decline, but the probability, not the possibility, but the probability is that it's going to re-rise. This additional data shows the behavior of the lake levels during these El Nino periods. And so what we see, and why I bring that up is because we're heading into this El Nino period, and I know that's been thrown around. We're in an El Nino period, it's going to be okay. But the data doesn't support that, not even in an El Nino period. If we take those five periods of yellow lines that I've highlighted, and we take a 2-year period around there, what we see is that back in the 1970s, the lake level dropped significantly, yes it did. But that was the only time. Because if you follow this chart, if you follow it, you can see that, okay, we had a lake level drop of 400 millimeters over a 2-year period in 82, 84. We had a lake rise in an El Nino period of 300 mil over a 2-year period in the 1997 to 99. What is more concerning is what happened in the 2016 when we had one of the hottest summers in New Zealand, or recorded hottest summers.
this is the most concerning for me, is that in that El Nino period, only 7 years ago, the Lake Rotorua rose 1.7 meters. In an El Nino period that is recorded as one of the hottest. What does that mean? Hot summers doesn't mean decline in lake levels, according to the data. So an approach of adaptation, one where we or resilience, where we just live with what we've got and or retreat. In war, if we retreat, it's like giving our territory to the enemy. We're giving our territory to the water. I don't know if we need to, because in this main report there's a solution that can help that, and it's a solution that doesn't, in my opinion, because I'm not a scientist, but all we're doing is mechanically assisting the natural process. We're suggesting that we use evaporator machines, and all we're doing is we're saying, hey, we're gonna help nature do what it does until we have margin. What happens with the machinery afterwards is there are opportunities where no one's using this technology here in New Zealand. You'll be the first region that has this. You'll be the only region that has this. If need be, you become the place where, okay, we need help. You can help. And so, yeah, I invite you to read these reports. I don't write reports, but I'm a youth pastor. I look after kids. I build fences and decks, and so don't judge the report. Yeah, I did my best. I believe that it's a good solution. I want to take the 6 weeks of mahi to put this together if I didn't think so. So, it's me.
Stay there. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the work that you've put in. You might be a youth pastor, but this is a good report for somebody who's a youth pastor. And for most residents to actually dive into researching the data and understanding trends, I appreciate this. Can you give us an idea from the economic side of things what this might cost? And you've talked about different scales. At what scale do you think this might be useful, and what might that cost be?
So the question becomes, what are your goals? Is your goal to become a sustainable, to introduce something that's sustainable, or is your goal to introduce something that's gonna put us ahead of a rise? Because that's where my thoughts are. How do you get ahead of this so that when it does re-rise, it's not going to have the impact?
I guess both.
Okay,
Rise and then.
yeah. So the first thing is that if you want to get ahead of the graph, then the more units the better. The economics of that is quite significant. Page 51. If you have a look on that. I scaled that down because I'm faithful. I'm a youth pastor, so I have a lot of faith. So I had 100 units, and I was like, okay, this is 100 units, and 100 units will get Lake Rotorua down by 2 meters by about August next year if we had implemented it by January this year. That's a significant drop. That gives us that will give us margin to work. But what then you do with 100 units after that? Because even around the world, the company that I've done our research with and that I've been talking with, not even they would have 20 or 30 units on a mine. So these units are used normally to get rid of toxic water, so that gold mines can comply. So all we've done is we're taking that and we just put it into the context that we need them. So to answer your question, the economics behind it is mainly on page 51. The more units, obviously, the more cost, but then it's the logistical kind of cost that beyond 30 units then poses. So my recommendation initially was 45 units because to me that struck a balance between over a 2-year period where the lake levels would come down enough to get ahead of the trend, but wouldn't be too much as opposed to 100 units. The other recommendation that I have recently added to this report is there is a resource consent already existing that there's a potential to investigate whether or not, and I don't know because like I said, I'm a youth pastor, but is there the potential to use these to control the lake levels on Lake Rotorua, and then therefore we can use the existing resource consent, because the condition of using that resource consent is that Lake Rotorua needs to be managed, the lake levels. Is this a means of managing that lake levels? And then what does that mean? That means that they potentially can breach the bridle from Lake Rotorua to Lake Rotorua if this becomes a viable option to manage the lake levels on Lake Rotorua. I don't know. It was a question that I wanted to put forward, but then in saying that, then how many units becomes effective and efficient to be used in that manner would be then about 20 units, and then that way we're dropping down now into the smaller scale operation, because then you'll be running them over a longer period of time. You're not going for the quick fire, okay, let's just get rid of the water. You're going for a sustainable option, and that to me would be an option that becomes sustainable because there's already means for that to happen potentially. So page 51, the economics behind it. Yeah. Just a few dollars.
Thank you. Look, I'll open it up for questions. Any questions on this? I've got a subsequent question. Oh, sorry.
Kia ora, TK. Once again, I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work you've put into this. I know you've been working on this for quite a while and putting it around various people and stuff like that. So I do just want to thank you for your efforts, and we definitely are looking at it.
Your staffing and personnel numbers are quite high. Your spreadsheet, what are you thinking goes into that?
So a significant portion of that is getting the personnel over from Australia to help set up and commission and then kind of run with us for that initially. So that their cost to get here, quite significant. Yeah. And the other cost really is just manning and security, I think, because these units are actually quite self-sustainable. They look after themselves. Once set up, like for 45 units, you can man these with 4 people maximum. That's what you need. It's the setup cost and the admin cost. So these are numbers that I kind of just talking with people. They said, "Oh, you're going to need this, this, and this to set it up, and you're going to need this, this, and this to run it." So, yeah.
Any further questions? Just one from me. Are you aware of it being used for this purpose anywhere in the world?
Not for getting rid of clean water. No, excuse me.
But just flood reduction in general? Or?
This company has they have a couple of they've trialed it. What makes it work in this context is the size of the lakes, because the lakes are actually really small in comparison to the similar size of what they would call almost some of the tailing ponds. And so when you look at large scale flooding, normally you're looking at flooded areas that have an area that is larger than 11 square kilometers and 8 square kilometers. You're looking at areas that are hundreds of square kilometers where they've trialled them there, but because of the size of that, they have been ineffective because it's too big an area. So the only real comparison that you can make is using similar sized tailing areas, tailing ponds for the mines, which is this is a perfect example for them. And this company has been around for over 30 years, so they're not a new company. It's not new technology. It just hasn't been used in this context because they get rid of water that you don't want. And when I initially talked to this company, they said it's a shame that you're dealing with fresh water. Such a it's a resource that you want to keep around, but for us, it's a resource that's creating harm, it's creating normal, right? And so this company is proven to do what they do. This is their bread and butter to get rid of water. It's the technology is proven, it's patented. So in terms of your question, is there any comparable data? Because of the scale of the flooding that they've used. I wouldn't say okay, you just use that because it's flooding. I would compare it to similar sized tailing ponds, which is just water.
Okay. Any further questions at all, members? Carl?
Just a question for our staff. Would this system, thank you, require a resource consent? Because effectively we're discharging to air. And I don't know the answer to that question, Mr. Chairman.
Any staff that could answer?
I'm not sure either.
No, well,
Sorry.
yeah, because if we have to go through a consenting process, it can take years.
So
I expect you've worked actually,
if I can jump on that.
and for the water take.
Yeah, sorry.
I can jump on it because I have asked those questions many times to council, to regional council, and the initial answer was you're probably going to have to go down that road. My research is actually that because I'm that guy is like actually surely it can't be that hard because we just two things we mechanically assisting what actually happened, and the second thing is that this is the impact that have come from mainly two major weather patterns, this cyclone hail and cyclone Gabriel, and that's really what's put us in this position. Now, this is how my mind works, because I'm like, okay, then there's got to be something that actually helps us. So resource, there's section 330, and some of you may be familiar with that, section 330 of the Resource Management Act, which talks about it talks about emergency work, and for me, and the way that I look at that is that there could be, and once again, I don't know, but there could there be potential for that to be used in a manner, because the way that I look at it is that when we look at what happened in the Hawke's Bay with all of the silt, because I'm a builder, so I know I can't move a certain amount of earth without getting a resource consent. If I move over 2,000 cube, I think it is, I need to get a mining license. Now I'm pretty sure that when they were moving that earth, that silt down in the Hawke's Bay, they didn't get a resource consent. So there has to be in there some precedent that allows us to remove the resource is different, but the impacts have been the same. It's created harm. We've lost hope. So could there be means of using that as a precedent for us to say, actually, they use the silt, they have to get rid of silt, they have to get rid of water.
Right, I need to bring this to a close and get on with the rest of the agenda, but again, I want to mahi to you for taking 6 weeks of work to pull this together, but most importantly for thinking big. We're at the moment we're going through a review, looking at the program, how well have we performed over the last decade or so, and where might we need to go in the future. And I really appreciate the big thinking. I think it was Albert Einstein who said we can't solve a problem on the same level that we created it on. So I really appreciate the out-of-box thinking. At the moment, there's two challenges with this. One is the economics, which I've mentioned to you. We're spending 22 odd million a year would be bigger than our annual budget on all the other things that we do in terms of the lakes. So that's one challenge. And then the second one would be, once the economics are right, can you get through the resource consent process? I'm not saying these things to you to forget about it, Ewa. I encourage you to continue on this mission to work with the staff and see if there is potential. I'd also encourage you to think laterally about what other context could this be used in. E.g., if we had an oil spill in the lake, is this a quick way of cleaning it up potentially or onto Earth? I'm not sure.
Well, thanks, Chair. Look, I think it's important. Congratulations on this. But the fundamental is this, if I look at the 40 or 50 units, it's 50 million kilowatts per year. Have you got any comparison in terms of where a supply that exists now that generates that sort of supply? I mean, what's Karapiro put out?
Yeah.
What some of the geothermal powers enterprises put out? 'Cause that's the key.
I don't have comparison, but I have spoken to Unison about it, and their planners say that there's enough on the grid to supply. When I was talking to them, I was talking about the 45 units. There's enough on the grid out there for them to supply 45 units. Whether or not you choose to go higher than that, but they're pretty confident that the network can handle that.
Okay. Thank you again to Kuramea. I really appreciate pulling this together. Any final comments?
Like I said, my expectations isn't one that you take this and say, okay, this is good. My expectations are that now that you have information, you can make some informed decisions, especially around their supporting them. We can adapt, we can become resilient. Just coming off some of the back of the stuff that we've been reading initially when it happened, to think that it's going to go down and stay down is one that historically the data doesn't support that. So, I'm here.
Kia ora, Kuramea. Appreciate it. You're welcome to stay and listen into the meeting if you like.
Fredo really said he's going to leave early at lunchtime, so that's a little bit long for me.
Ka pai. Thank you again. Okay, there's no items not on the agenda, no changes to the order of business. Any declaration of conflicts of interest? Carl? Okay, go to the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll take those as read. Any corrections at all?
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
What? Move, Councillor Winters. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Greg. Okay. Move on to our first report.
That's all good, yes. Contract, yeah.
All right. Move on to our first report. And just in terms of correspondence received, we have received a letter from the Mayor Tapsell, that I think we all received that digitally, but just tabling that in terms of the meeting formality. Okay, we'll go to the report of the appointment of representatives of the Arawa Lakes Trust. And this is simply moving the addition of Mariana. You'll see it in the report. Yep. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Mayor Tapsell. Second, Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Verbal update on the freshwater gold clam response. And we've got two speakers today. So we'll have Greg Corbett's going to give us the update in terms of what MPI and Regional Council are doing. But we also have the Chair of Ngāti Karawhai, Iwi Trust, would like to raise some of their concerns in terms of this issue.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, group members. Firstly, I'd also just like to acknowledge William Amaru and his team who have helped, and Waka turning up just on time. Waka, biosecurity officer of my team, who is also a key participant in our Lakes biosecurity program. So, as you're all aware, gold clams are detected in the Waikato River in early May. We as a council were notified by MPI on the 19th of May of that find, and at that stage they had detected them at Bob's Landing, that's just north or just upstream from Lake Karapiro. And by that stage, they had already detected them K or so upstream from Bob's Landing and all the way down to Hamilton City itself. So it was a stretch of about 45 Ks of the river. So gold clams, just a little bit about them. They're a relatively small mollusk. They survive, they're a freshwater clam, but they can survive in brackish conditions. They're tolerant of a really wide range of water temperatures from near freezing up to about 37 odd degrees. While they like sandy bottoms, they can attach themselves to basically any substrate within a river or lake system, and they can grow rapidly to rather large numbers. And overseas, they've found them densities up to nearly 20,000 individuals per square metre of substrate. So, they can grow to huge numbers. They're self-fertile. They produce basically larvae, which are miniature offspring of themselves, and can produce up to about 70,000 per individual per year. They consume large amounts of photo and zooplankton, and obviously will compete for food and space with any of our native invertebrates and mollusks in an aquatic situation. Overseas, they've been found to clog and foul infrastructure, and that's been their main impact overseas, noted here. And the other thing to note is that they've never been eradicated anywhere in the world where they've invaded. So that's just a little bit of a background on them. Following the notification from MPI back in the 19th of May, we immediately talked with William and his team about what we could do locally. We immediately surveyed all our risk lakes, but basically using snorkel surveys, and we rechecked all our eDNA data that we have been collecting over the last few years with no evidence there, and subsequently planned for resampling with eDNA. Snorkel surveys were carried out at Lakes Kawera, Rotorua, Tapu and Rotorua, and nothing has been detected to date. Although, as you can imagine, trying to find these things when they're at the very early stages of establishing would be really hard. They're very small. So the work over in the Waikato River, Biosecurity New Zealand, which is the biosecurity arm of MPI, they've been working with Waikato River iwi, the regional council there, Mercury Energy, to survey the whole Waikato River system. They've found a population of them at Lake Maraetai at Monokino, and no further infestations in any other major tributaries to that river system, including Lake Taupo. They believe that these clams are probably in the stages of infesting all the way down the river. There's certainly nothing stopping them from travelling all the way up the river mouth. And to date, they believe that they've probably been in the river system for at least 2 years, possibly longer, but at least 2 years. The source of the incursion will probably never really be known, but it is possible that they arrived through an imported wakeboarding ski boat as just residual water left in ballast tanks. From a council perspective, our council have considered implications of gold clams to our region, and council have directed staff to continue to support MPI's response to this incursion. To date, we've had limited involvement from MPI. They have been basically busy in the Waikato, although they are looking to support ongoing surveillance across not just our region, but the rest of New Zealand with eDNA technology, which they've also been doing quite a bit of work on trying to refine and improve the sensitivity of that. So what we've done as a council to date is, as I said, we did that initial early surveillance with no detections. We are now incorporating clam surveillance into our biannual surveillance programs for the lakes. And we obviously will continue our vote rank compliance of Rule 7 in our regional pest management plan, which is actually the strongest rule in the country at the moment for protecting against this potential incursions. I'm not sure, William, you've got anything you'd like to add from your involvement today, or your team's involvement?
Probably just that we never found out from MPI, we found out through New Collective, which I thought was a bit odd at the start. But we are taking it pretty seriously for its fault. And a lot of our whānau have asked for more to be done, and from Top's point of view, MPI's responses is not going to be enough to keep this out, so we're quite worried about it. And we have a big hui next week on the 27th at 5:30, and MPI's coming to that to kind of talk a bit more, but a chance for our whānau to speak out about it as well. So, yeah, we're quite worried, and why out.
Thanks, Will. The last thing I'd add, Chair, just before I finish, is that controlling these things is probably going to be really problematic. I believe MPI are going to look at the suction dredging population reduction measure, and also the potential for matting to suppress and kill large areas of these things. As far as river users, the check, clean, dry message is really, really important, and it is effective, but drying does mean completely dry, and that means that vessels probably would need to be cleaned and then dried for at least 2 days prior to entering another water body. Any material like wetsuits or other absorbent materials would probably need to be further treated. Either that's with freezing or drying or heat, which are two treatments which are known to be effective, but the practicalities of it are a little bit problematic. So freezing means freeze them solid, and hot water means a water temperature of 45 degrees or more for at least 20 minutes of treatment. The larvae will probably be killed through applications of disinfectants like Burcon or bleach, but again, we still don't really understand exactly how effective those treatments are. Yeah, and obviously any vessel such as wakeboarding or ski boats that hold ballast water pose probably a greater risk than other vessels. Thanks, Stuart.
Before we go to you, Cyrus, I'll just check. Lana, do you still need to leave at 10:30?
I can wait. I can make it to the
Get the place. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to start Cyrus and then have to pause in between. So go to Cyrus.
Kia ora. Firstly, apologies for being late. I was under a slight misapprehension, understanding of what I was here for. I thought it wasn't going to be good, like this. Anyway, I was just going to give Ngāti Tarawhai's input with regards to the Golden Plains. Now, we've received an email from different iwi groups around the Waikato Wānanga that was being held in July with regards to the Golden Plains, late July. Couldn't make it because of different hui we were at and other work commitments. But on August the 27th, at a special general meeting we had Ngāti Tarawhai. Better tell you who we are. I'm the chair of Ngāti Tarawhai Iwi Trust. Ngāti Tarawhai, our whenua is out at Okataina. So the Okataina Senate Reserve, the lands surrounding the lake, was given by Ngāti Tarawhai to set up the Okataina Senate Reserve. Land from Ngāti Lomai and Ngāti Lomai Kōpaka were also added, and as well as Ngāti Pikia were also added later on. But the land around Okataina was given by Ngāti Tarawhai for the purposes of Senate Reserve, conservation purposes. We're the owners of a Lakes Lodge out of Okataina, and we were very concerned when we heard at our meeting in the end of August 27th, about the spread of golden clams into the Waikato River and the extent of that spread. And at that meeting, we were given charge by our beneficiaries that they wanted us to take all steps possible to prevent spread to Okataina. Given that, sent an email off to Tawa Lakes Trust, who hold the lake beds of all the lakes in trust for the iwi, as to what plans they had, given that a month's time, well, it's only a week's time now, you have opening of the fishing season, and given that 35% of our visitors who come over and visit our lakes, not only Okataina, comes from the Waikato district. So stopping that spread from there, we believe, is urgent and of high importance. Attended a meeting with Biosecurity New Zealand at Tawa Lakes Trust to understand what they're doing. We were told that they're informing the public, monitoring, testing the lake, and voluntary compliance is all they can really put in place at this time, and monitoring and basically analysing whether it's here yet. Iwi discussed that, and we've discussed it over the last 3 weeks. We don't believe that that's going to stop the spread of the golden clam into our lakes. With Okataina, there's only one road access in and out, which we believe helps us. We've been looking at the options available to us. Rahui, which again is voluntary compliance, is the legal method to do a closure of the lake until such time as a temporary closure, until such time as some sort of measures can be put in place so that we can put in those prevention measures to stop the spread of the golden clam. We've had the difficulty from Greg with regards to you can't eliminate it. Best prevention is to stop it getting here in the first place. For us, we're looking at all options, including closing down the lake on a temporary basis. We've received the support of several community groups and iwi when we put this out that we want to close it down temporarily, access, while we try and think of ways that we can stop the spread to our lake. A couple of community groups that were at that biosecurity meeting said they'd like to see the same thing happen at Okareka, Rotorua, Ule, Hikitapu. I mean, if it gets to Rotorua, which is highly likely, then it gets into the Kaitun, it gets into Rotoiti, but while we can do it, Ngāti Te Rāwhai, our iwi trust, we say we want a temporary closure. And while we can implement a rāhui using regulations, and as a question I asked at biosecurity, we can't enforce a closure unless, of course, we decide to go rogue and say, no, we're closing it down. It's not that we want to stop people from doing it. For ourselves, the opening of the trout season, trout fishing season, we've got a full lodge. All of ours, it's going to have an economic impact on us if we do it. But our concern is the conservation of the lake. It's not about the dollar. It's not the economic impact. It's the impact on the way, our flora and fauna. And that's about it. I actually came here today thinking I was going to hear what measures are going to be put in place by you. And I'm going to go back and report to the rest of the trust, and then we will decide what we're going to do. If you have any questions, I'll answer as best I can.
Yeah. Basically, we want a temporary closure so that we can institute measures. If any biosecurity, even with COVID, the first thing we wanted to do was being able to monitor and analyse and test. If we can get in the short term, I hear tracking dogs, sniffer dogs can be trained to sniff them out. If we can get one of those trained up, a couple of those trained up, so if we have that happen on the Okatana Road, on boats and that, and then it can even be spread in the folds of your wetsuit. Using a bleach, I was told it needs to be soaked for 10 minutes in that bleach for it to be effective to kill juveniles. Having a washdown station, the canter of the road and the nature of Okatana, everything plays down here. So you wash it down, it's just going to flow down there. Those are all the things that we look at. If we were to take it up to our relations up the road and I said, oh, my, wash it up there, it can be spread by the birds or the wallabies. It's starting to sound a bit like those American ladies they call Karens. And my apologies if you see Karens here, that's just the term everyone knows. But it can be spread like that. Best contraception is saying no. Best prevention is saying no. Until such time as we've got other things in place. So that's where we're coming from.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Chairman. Dr. Keane Kennedy, member of the Lakes Water Quality Society. Kia ora, Cyrus. Maybe for Ngāti Te Rapa, you already got something in place to keep out the catfish in your lake. Because we all know that Lake Rotorua and Lake Rotorua are populated with catfish. So there must be something already in place that we don't get the catfish into any other lakes in Arawa. I just thought you might have had something similar there to keep out the golden clam. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah. We follow the same processes. We managed to get some funding to actually put in a monitoring and a person out there to push the information about catfish and washing the boats down and all that. We've been told by Dr. Ian Kusebs that the science says that it will eventually get there. Catfish will eventually get there. Apparently they can travel over land. So, but until we do, we will continue to fight as much as we can.
Okay, firstly, Cyrus, apologies for the mixed message in terms of getting you here. That was me. I'd asked staff to ask you to come along because I thought it was important that this group heard Ngāti Te Rāwhai's views and that there was concern out there that the current controls we don't feel are going to address the issue. So I appreciate you coming along and putting Ngāti Te Rāwhai's views to the table. Essentially, what I'm hearing is you're requesting support from this group to support a closure of the lake. Okay, I'll open it up. Debates. Kapai. Any questions from members at all?
Or just to boats?
To boats. If people are coming around to fish on, fly fish, it's fine as long as we'll have information out there. This needs to be done with your fishing gear. If you can, the cleaning, the bleaching. We believe that will be enough. It's the boats at this stage until we can get measures into place.
Sure. Councillor Winters.
Thank you, Chair. Cyrus, so the Bay of Plenty Regional Council Harbour Master, under the Maritime Transport Act, has the ability to close lakes. However, and I've asked him to do a legal analysis of this, because I asked him to look at closing Rotorua and Rotorua because of high lake levels. He's come back under the Maritime Transport Act and he said he can only close them for navigation and safety issues. And getting access to a lake is not a navigation and safety issue. under his legislative powers, he can close lakes, a portion of lakes for an event if there's something happening. But he can't, under the Maritime Transport Act, through his legislative powers, close a lake per se. Now, so that's the harbour master. There has to be another avenue, and I don't know what it is yet, if you want to do what you want to do. But I'm just giving you that information from the harbour master per se, of his legislative powers. Because it is quite limited.
Yeah, previously, the Biosecurity Act does provide the powers to MPI.
Right.
So they can place a controlled area notice, which again is a temporary means, but one of the grounds for applying a controlled area notice is to prevent the incursion of a pest to area.
Can I just clarify something with Cyrus? So Cyrus, you mentioned earlier you had a meeting with MPI and they said they couldn't close the lake.
Yeah.
Right.
Was it prior to becoming an unwanted organism under Section 40?
It's just that.
They said that they couldn't close the lake.
Yeah, they said they couldn't, and then we provided 3 examples where they have used it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're keen to push for that. I was keen to push for that when we found out about the need, to be honest. There's definite risk there with these folks in the Waikato to our region, and we all know that it's harder to clean up the mess once it gets here.
Not only that, you have your recreational activities, you've got rowing, you've got wakaana, you've got water skiing competitions, you've got jet skiers. All those events are coming up over the summer. We're either going over there or they're coming back this way.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Kia ora, Cyrus and Greg. I guess firstly what I'd like to say from Te Arawa Lakes Trust is that we do support and respect your notion of wanting to close Lake Okataina, but also for the impact that it will cause for our whole township, considering all of our lakes and with the amount of boaties and visitors that come to our waters. So I just want to table that Te Arawa Lakes Trust and support your iwi implementing means, and it just means a process that needs to be worked through. So good to hear that all of our iwi partners around Okataina are in coordination and cooperation with this. Also, just looking at the cost of what that might be, furthermore, because of that, we're looking at Harbour Master, looking at MPI and biosecurity and those methods. Again, it is a process. It doesn't mean to say it cannot be done. It's just a process that we need to work through. So I'll be keen to work through that with yourself, Greg. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a question to Greg through you, Mr. Chair. I heard, and I hope I'm wrong on this, potentially the larvae could be transported by attaching to the feet of birds. Have you know any science around that?
There is and the research from overseas suggests that it is possible, but the larvae do have when they're released from their parent, they do have a mucus strand within that's semi-buoyant, and that is sticky as well. So there's the potential for that to stick, but if you're looking at movement by vessels or other human mediated thing, the risk is quite low compared to those other means. Yeah, I think that they've identified it as a possibility rather than something that.
And through you, Chair. Cyrus, look, I feel your pain, actually. I think back to when we discovered catfish in Rotorua and the missed opportunity to be more vigilant before they arrived. I also look at the fact that we have so far contained catfish in Rotorua and Rotorua, and that is largely through community buy-in on this. So I think it's a really important issue to get out amongst our community. And to me, a really good way of doing that and showing how serious it is the temporary closure of a lake. And, you know, representing our lakes that have populations around them, I hear a lot from every lake, we are the jewel in the crown. I've always come back and said, actually, Okataina is the jewel in the crown. It is the lake that shows us what our lakes were like before we had Pākehā living around them, because I'm aware Evie lived around that lake for many, many years before the Tarawera eruption. And I think it is absolutely vital that we protect Okataina. I'll get shot by a lot of my constituents. I totally support your idea of a temporary closure. I know it can be difficult, and actually we've had a bit of a discussion with Te Arawa Lakes Trust about this a couple of days ago, and I looked into the possibility of closing the boat ramp. It's not actually on a reserve, I've discovered. It's actually technically part of the roadway, so we'd be having to look at closing the road. But, you know, I don't think we should let difficulty stop us doing something. You know, Greg said that we can push MPI to do it, and we need to be pushing MPI. And quickly, because as you said, we've got the fishing season opening, and we've kind of missed the boat for the other lakes. But you're absolutely right about the number of people who come and use our lakes over summer from the Waikato. And I think it's vital that we have a strategy in place for summer for all our lakes. And it is going to cost us. I'm really sorry. It is going to cost us, but we need to put something in place, and we can actually go out and use our community to help on a voluntary basis with that as well. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and tēnā korua. Just want to let you know that while we don't have any formal resolution on the table, we haven't had time. I do note for us to all go back and speak to our the councils that, or the parties that we represent. You would have our support to investigate and encourage MPI to support you to be able to close that lake. I think none of us would ever take these sorts of decisions lightly. However, I think elevating it to that level of action will also allow our community and those that visit us to understand the significance of why we actually have to do that. Because it certainly will, when they ask why, they'll realise just how dangerous the freshwater gold clam is. So with that as the understanding, you would certainly have our personal support, although we will still need to get that. And probably just the only question is in terms of timing on when you may look to do that. I'm hearing you talk about the opening day for trout, which is pretty sure it's 1st of October. So that's very soon. So yeah, just if you were looking at it then.
So we actually had a meeting, trust meeting yesterday went longer than we wanted, about communication plan and our next steps with regards to that. And thank you for those words of support, Phil, Tanya. And we want to get that information out to the people because we're booked solid for lodge. We want to tell them they're all keen fishermen, they've been waiting for this, and we can say, sorry, but this is what we want to do and this is what we're going to do. So we're going to inform them this in the next few days, and we will be putting out a press release as well early next week stating what we intend to do. We will pursue MPI with your guys' support as well, but we will, whatever we do, we want to close it temporarily.
I'd like to put a motion that the strategy group recommends MPI the temporary closure of Lake Okataina. So I'm going to put that to the table. Do I second it?
No, sorry.
Okay, I can't.
Yeah, no, you
Oh, damn it. Women rules. Just get the digger in those rocks, bro.
Thank you for those thoughts. Support, yeah. Anyway,
Well, I did say while we don't have a formal resolution on the table, I do want to note, so I'm happy to put some form of motion on it, but just to double check, understanding that we haven't had time to consult with the people we represent, but I think what you do have is support and principle around this table to investigate and of course to encourage MPI who do have the mandate to do so. With that being noted, happy to take some guidance on what that motion could be, but perhaps it could just be that we support in principle further investigation to close based on the significant biosecurity hazard of the freshwater gold claim. Perhaps.
So that's allowed?
Yes, because it's action investigations, not
Gotcha. So we've got the motion, can I have a seconder? Mariana? So that second motion is to support in principle to investigate and encourage MPI to further investigation. Got a move in a second, councillor?
Greg, that meeting next week with MPI and yourself at 5:30, I heard. So where's that?
Well, I said millennium, I believe, and it's an open meeting.
It is a public meeting. So are we able to table that resolution that was passed today? Because I think you need some horsepower behind this to MPI. Are the people at MPI who are going to be there, do they have the ears for this?
John Walsh.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify, Greg, you're talking about declaration of controlled area under section 131? Yeah. So we know what the clause is. It's really curious that they're saying they don't have those powers, because I've heard John Walsh refer to that clause in terms of so.
Yeah, they're currently using it for part of the Kaluka or invasive seaweed response. So there's controlled area notices at Aotea, Great Island.
Yep.
At the moment, it's been used for the control of PSA, and also was used in all the fruit fly responses, and has been used in the Khaleesi virus incursion a couple of decades ago. It is a very heavy response.
Councillor Brown?
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, I might suggest an amendment. Could you just read that out again?
Well, what I've got here is support in principle to investigate and encourage MPI to further investigate closing of Lake Okataina.
Could I add something around with urgency? If that's all right with me.
You could change that first investigate, because I accidentally said it twice. There's a lot of investigation going on. That first investigate to with urgency.
And I also support what Councillor Winston said about the meeting coming up next week, that resolution prepared by them.
Can I have that time and date for that meeting again, please?
Wednesday, the 27th.
5:30 at the Millennium.
Members can make it, that would be good to demonstrate our support. Okay, so we've got the motions, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you.
Whahiti nei mui a koutou ngā whakaro tautoko i a mātou nei o ngā tāra. We thank you for your support. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Cyrus. Okay. Next up is a verbal update from Lana on the review process. No mana.
Very brief update, and thank you very much for this opportunity. So thus far, what has been achieved is a review of the documents that underpin the group itself, particularly the settlement documentation, interviews with 25 individuals, some by themselves, some in groups of 2 or more. That includes the lead negotiator for the Arawa Lakes claim. From that
I have drafted already 2 sections of the report right through, so basically the governance review component is complete. And I'm leaving shortly to go and meet with the panel to begin firming up the recommendations that will be coming back. So we've progressed very well. And I thank you all for your time in participating in the interviews and your I guess your verba and being so frank with me, being so open and honest, so that we can ensure that the recommendations that come back are fit for purpose. That's probably it in a nutshell. I don't want to go into any of the detail at this stage. If that's all right, it won't be long before we have something to put before you, I would say.
Councillor Winters, without asking any of the detail.
No. Timeline for the release of your report before Christmas?
Yes.
Yep. In fact, on that note, my suggestion with staff is that our December meeting be more of a workshop, an opportunity to receive the findings and to initially workshop them if we don't have too many other agenda items we need to take.
Could I suggest, Chair, to expedite this, that when the draft is prepared, that it's shared with the Chair for review, for an initial input to make sure that's fit for purpose. We don't want anything else coming.
Sure.
Thank you. Just had a question in terms of the process. Once the draft, it was really just once it's completed, who sees it and in what timing? Will it come back to this group all at one, or will you go back to the three, the chair and the 3 groups, and then come to the table? I'm just wondering in terms of process on when it lands to the table.
I'm happy to take my guidance from the chair.
Yeah, we haven't discussed that. My view is that we should receive it all at the same time and ideally together.
Okay.
That's why I was suggesting kind of that workshop format, that opportunity to all hear it firsthand. Any other questions at all? Thank you for your time, Maya. Kia ora. Oh, sorry, can I have a mover and a seconder that we receive that verbal update? Yep. Chairman Leader and Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we're at morning tea time, so we'll have a break for 15 minutes or so. So back at 11. He said, yeah. No.
Oh, no, it's good. I'm so sorry. So did I could put this name on a thing.
You do. We've got
Kia ora tātou, we'll reconvene now, please. So before we move to item 8.5 of Arawa Lakes Trust update, just want to add Nookie Nicholson to the apologies. We forgot to do that earlier. So otherwise, I'll invite Sweta up to speak to the Lakes Trust update.
Tēnā tātou, tēnei mihi nui kia koutou, ngana hai mai, my new chief at Arawa Lakes Trust. Thank you for having me here today for the update. So the focus for this quarter has been primarily uplifting our whakapapa, our guiding values across the Lakes program. That is the Waiora, Waiata, Wairua and Waiata. So for Waiora, for us has really been about seeking and solidifying partnership opportunities and resources to contribute towards long-term positive outcomes for our lakes, our people and the wider community. So one of the things I'd like to highlight in that space is the recent framework agreement that has been signed off this month. So it's not a new framework agreement, but within this framework agreement, we've been working on our catfish fire control project, our operations project, and our community catfish netting project, as well as all the biosecurity self-certification contracts. The thing that's different about the framework agreement now is that it's no longer a 1 year or a 3 year framework agreement. It's a long-term 10-year is what we're going to be looking at. We're not just a contracting partner, we are Te Arawa. We're here before and we're going to be here continuing into the future. So what I want to highlight with this is that it speaks to the work of Te Arawa Lakes Trust and the building of the team in terms of all the work that's been happening on the lakes. So acknowledging us, but also acknowledging our partners, Waka, Helen, Greg, and of course the strategy group, because it's the ability to see that what we've done has been great for our lakes, and also that true partnership is looking forward into the future. So kia ora. Wairua has been about facilitating space and building the connection between our people and our lakes. So we've been busy with a lot of engagement events with the Whikiahu Day tomorrow. The Tarawera Impact Collective team, Te Aroha Tarawera, had a 3-day Te Mana o Te Wai wānanga this month. Within the wānanga, we had about 130 whānau registered. We still had a really good turnout on the day. So we had Te Mana o Te Wai workshops, we had workshops on using EDNA, and this is all important because we need to equip our whānau with the ability to carry out the maki on the lake. So we've been talking about golden sands and surveillance. What are the tools that are being used in this space? So there's also wānanga held with the Uri of Tarawera, and we look to have another one at the end of the year. Waiata is about celebrating Te Arawa Mātauranga excellence and success as it relates to the tile. So July, we had, we went to the Matariki Awards, and Te Arawa Lakes Trust was the recipient of YT, the Health and Science Award, along with the rest of Te Arawa. It was a big Te Arawa presence there, so it was really awesome to see down in Pōneke. And that's just really acknowledged the innovation and the dedication of the team to the mahi that we're doing. And in saying that, we're trying to inspire the next generation, so we also had the Te Tūpoku Ngāwha Science Fair. And we had, I think, over 130 registered students, 75 projects submitted, and all up over the 3 days, about 1,000 whānau, kids, teachers, all the community come through. So over double what it was the first year we held it, and it's just going to keep growing. So real awesome, you know, massive highlight, having the judges there, having scientists from outside the Rotorua and within the Rotorua come and contribute to that. But the real highlight takeaway for our team was seeing the kids' faces and just how proud they were in doing the mahi that they do. So awesome. And I just want to say, if you know Keely, she's been spearheading the catfish community project for a while now. She also spearheaded the Te Tūpoku Ngāwha Science Fair. She's actually leaving us, and this is her last day today. So just acknowledging all the mahi she's done in this space. And if you want to be, we'll be down at the Rakamore. I know Greg and William and Simon have touched on the Golden Fan threat. That was a big push for us in terms of getting this hui happening next week. So I will extend the invite out so it can be shared amongst the strategy group. What wasn't mentioned is that our dive team at Te Arawa Lakes Trust joined FOPRC in terms of their surveillance across our lakes. So that was really key to us getting involved right from the get-go, and it's part of that framework agreement. We can just move. When things happen, we can move. We don't have to worry about the paperwork and that. We're ready to go. What we're also asking is that MPI give us eDNA kits so that we can choose the sites that are surveillance. So at the moment, yes, it's important at boat ramps, it's biosecurity, pathogen pathways. We get that, but our taonga is what our focus is in terms of the impact it's going to have on our lake. So working with iwi and hapu to decide what sites are significant in terms of surveillance, because regardless of shutting down the lakes or whatever the next steps are, the reality is that they've been sort of not managed at least for 2 years. So there has been traffic in and out of our lakes. So surveillance is still key going forward. In terms of the catfish volunteer program, that continues to run smoothly. We had our Marama Davidson join Mariana and Will the other week to do some catfish netting. So that was cool, highlighting our work that we do in the lakes. Numbers are still lower than what they were previously. And we're actually starting to see a bit more quota in the bycatch coming through. So that's an awesome outcome. It's a snapshot, you know, there's a long-term story here, but it's still a good story. Yes, in terms of the product spray program, spraying will take place for the next 2 months across the Te Arawa Lakes. Due to the lake levels, there's some lakes that we are probably not going to be able to spray, but we will need to revise that going forward. Cultural monitoring plan associated with that has also been implemented, and we're working alongside you and having to do parts of that monitoring in terms of the quota and kākei. Update on the UFI project is we're down to just bi-monthly monitoring at the moment, so we're looking at phase 2 of what the UFI project would look like. We've had some initial discussions with Rosemary's teams about using UFI in the Winiata Fund. For erosion control. So that's one side of it. There's obviously been a lot of call from outside Little here, but we need to secure what it means for us internally first. Jobs for nature, our wetland team have been super busy. They've been out at Waikawa Wetland and working with Tātou Pounamu, Iwi Hapu, Ofata Primary School, Rotorua Primary School, Rotorua Rotorua Girls High School, and overall the team were able to get in about 13,000 native plants in 1 week. So that's awesome. And we've secured 4,000 trees to go into Te Pōkuru wetland. The team have been really busy. They've taken on 2 training programs, one being with Tarrant, running a water monitoring program for Ngāti Ke, Ngāti Tuara, Tūharangi, and Ngāti Tahu, Ngāti Whaua. The other one is with the Kāhua Collective. We've got about 12 trainees down there at the moment, go through all sorts of whaiamahe. So Scott Street down our operations base today was super busy. We've got lots of trainees down there. We've got the MPI and Whakasia doing a whole new cohort of biosecurity officers with some of our iwi members in there. And MPI has come to do some specialist training around the Golden Clan threats. So that's happening today. In terms of research opportunities, Holt worked with our science chair, Dr. Dennis Oskin-Dutcher, yep, and Susie Woods, putting in a bid to NDIE Endeavour Fund, and I can say today, update on the report, that the bid was successful. So we have resource allocated to Holt to be part of the, it's essentially looking at the lakes research and climate change into the future. So, that's exciting. We also have, next week we'll be hosting around 40 different fish futures scientists from around the Motu. We'll have Fish and Game here as well, Doc, looking at the conversation is around the fundamental issues for fish governance within the Te Arawa Rohe and feeding research into this group so that we have long-term better outcomes for our tonga fisheries. In terms of the Te Arawa Climate Change Working Group, they're still working proactively, engaging in council processes. Dr. Kevin Morgan has been nominated to sit on the newly established Lake Level Climate Change Technical Working Group. And I think we'll get to that a bit later. Lake structures and consent, Te Papa Akurewa represented Te Arawa Lakes Trust for the Lake Rotorua Limited Notified Lake Structures Consent Hearing on the 29th of August, looking and told advocating for a 10-year consent term for lake structures. Yeah. To the Freshwater Working Group, developing some why statements and report outlining statements. Next steps are to get some funding. And for Te Arawa Lakes Trust, still working closely with our iwi and trying to expand on current projects we're doing, for example, at Hinehopu, and with the Tarawera Collective, building a water monitoring framework. Any
Questions, members? I'm very impressed with your presentation. You look at the headlines, you need to make look back down again. You know the subject matter, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It was a very, very good delivery across quite a complex range of items that you put on the table. In terms of the jobs for nature, it's been for a while now. Is there an end point or in the context of where Te Arawa Lakes Trust is?
Resource-wise,
resource-wise.
We're up till June 2024, yeah.
So
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah, but from then on, we're going to be needing to, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Sweetie, great presentation. What's Te Arawa's view of golden clams on the rest of the lake system? I know that you heard Cyrus's presentation. What's Te Arawa's view on that threat for this year?
I guess what we feel at the moment is that the approach has been that's basically going to happen. You know, that's the approach that's been taken, and that's not good enough for us. We obviously have so many pressures within our lakes already that we're trying to fight, and we're looking, you know, if we take Lake Weed for an example, we're doing so much work in terms of building the business case, do this credit spray program, oofing. It's been a problem here. Why can't we stop something before it gets out of control? Because the reality is, if the proper resource had been put right back at the beginning with the lake weeds, then we wouldn't be in this situation. Same thing for golden.
So do you think there's a drastic measure that needs to be put in place now, given we'll hear about that, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. So just one more. So I've got 500 kahikatea that Need a home if you.
Oh, nice, nice.
Let me know.
Cool, awesome. I didn't realise it was coming from him yet. We'll put the feelers out already. I will say, yeah, the reports are getting longer and longer, and I think it's a testament to all the work that's happening, but it does bring it on.
I'll go Doug, then Murray and then Phil.
Thanks, Chair. Even though it might be getting longer, could I just compliment you on the comprehensive issues you covered, but in a very concise manner, easy to read.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ngāmihi Suita, great report, and it just shows that we had great leaders and managers that taught you about.
We got many.
But just have a question. So you mentioned that Tauta wanting to receive EDNA kits from MPI. When will you have a response about those?
So the communication has been that yes, we will get them from them, but how many is the question?
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess they're looking at their budget, but we'll put the pressure on at the meeting again.
Yeah. Wednesday night.
Wednesday night.
Yeah, put it on.
the heat.
Yeah. The other one is, you also mentioned Te Arawa Lakes Trust are moving into phase 2 in terms of the UFI project. What are some of those options? What does that look like in terms of ramping up phase 2 of the UFI?
I think for us, it's a conversation we need to have with our users. So that's part of it. I guess what we're hearing is we've had good results, so it works. People are interested in it, both internally and externally. So even Hapura calling on us to do something outside there in front of their backyard. And then of course there's opportunities like Rosemary's, there's even conversations around the golden plan, the benthic barrier that they're using. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
We just need to sit down with the people that have been part of this project.
Yeah. And I look forward to those options, and we'll probably discuss them within the TALT board, but I'm hoping that Coda Habitat will also be inclusive of that. Just to support our current retaining walls that we have within our program. The other thing is congratulations on the funding approved. That's great to hear. Look forward to what those next steps may be. And then lastly, I guess it comes back to the golden plan, because it's been a pressing issue this morning, and I support Councillor Winters is saying put that pressure on MPI next week. Yeah, and we'll be there to support.
And through you, Chair. Thank you. Savannah, you're so good at your job. You've actually answered one of my questions before I asked it, which was, I picked up about the possible use of matting to suppress gold clams, and I was wondering if Goofy, where that would fit into that, and whether it could be useful there. So that's great. You've already answered that question. Look, the other thing was just a comment. You were talking about the lake weed spray program and how you wouldn't be able to do it in some areas for various reasons. If you'd like to feed that back to me, I will make sure I get it out to our local social media networks for those particular communities, and we can front foot them saying, but you didn't come and spray outside my place.
Yeah.
So we can explain why it hasn't happened and that it will happen.
Yeah, so they have the APCG meeting, I think, next month.
Yeah.
And that's when we'll be clear about what areas have been sprayed and from there.
Great. Well, if we just keep in touch with each other, and I'll make sure I get that stuff out for you.
Just your comment about the catfish, and you're seeing some signs of increase in quota, and that's good news. Hopefully, but I know it's work in progress and a long way to go. But just getting back to this conference that you talked about, conference on future fish governance. Can you just explain that a little bit more about who's coming and what?
Yeah, so Fish Futures program is a nationwide program. It's spearheaded with Force Institute, Te Wai Māori, and they have 3 local partners, which is Te Arawa and Arawhenua and Muriku. And it also includes representatives from Fish and Game and DOC. So there's a research program, and TALT, so Te Arawa have been working with the researchers, includes some of the mahi that's been happening out Tarawera and Okatana in terms of food web with water and smelt. Dr. Ian Kusat is part of this research program, so he's looking to build Coda refuge within the lakes, particularly the lakes that have catfish. And then there's a bunch of social science stuff, so we've been doing interviews around Morihana. We're looking at doing also, it's a 4-year program, we're only doing the second year. And the idea is that the research that we do here and then also across the nation will feed into policy. So there's also a policy working group. Next week we have a conversation internally with TOLT and this working group about those fundamental issues that we face now, but also how this research is going to feed into this.
Okay, so when's it being held again, sorry?
The symposium is being held on the 29th and 28th and 29th of September. Yeah, next week.
Yeah, so it's 27th is biosecurity with the MPI Golden Plan, straight into Fish Futures Symposium on the 28th and 29th.
Thank you.
I can extend the invitation.
Yes, please.
Yeah, if you could circulate that to
Yeah,
me.
please do circulate the invitation, that'd be great. Just one final comment, I'm looking at the new chief executive over here. I wouldn't mind just hearing how you're settling in the context of all of this business that's happening right now. Can I ask that question, Mr. Chief?
Would you like to answer it?
So which I'm settling in very well. It's just, the context of the work across Arawa Lakes Trust, but as we all know, a very quite a significant environmental footprint in terms of the work and a whole range of strands of work within that and work streams and what have you. But thrilled to be in, like I'm about 6 weeks in now, and we've got a really capable team. Lots of William and Sweet, all very well trained. Mariana. Yeah, so from my perspective, there's huge opportunity. There's lots of risks that we've got to manage. Resource is always an issue, and how we do that. Don't just acknowledge first time we've met, I think, but acknowledge that they've been the regional council. I think framework in terms of a 10-year view of how we can work together and deliver things on the ground is a way for us to work together and move forward on. So yeah, still got more trainer wheels on too, but
No, I mean, I'm pretty, Mr. Chair, excited to put the level of focus Arawa Lakes Trust and their, I guess, their duty of care and their responsibility in terms of the co-management of the lakes and the ownership of the bed. And of course, we all know how connected we are to the lakes and how precious they are. They are the jewel in the crown, got a bit tarnished over the years. So it's nice to get a bit of shine back on them. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions, members? There's one from me just around lake levels. I've heard William talk about the potential positive benefits of lake levels. One of them was related to catfish. Do you just want to elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So, well, I'm on the Arawa Lakes Trust dive team, obviously, so we do monitoring around the littoral zone of the lakes. And one of the key things that's been a concern for us is the suppression of our native seed banks within the lake bed. These seed banks don't get a time to replenish because of the constant pressure from the lake weed on top of it. Studies have shown there's a concern that they only have a certain amount of viability so that they could essentially become dormant. So when we talk about native seed banks, we're talking about biodiversity, we're talking about whakatanga, we're talking about solutions. It's also the preferred food source of coda as well. So there's a pressure on our seed banks, our native seed banks at the moment. What we're seeing with the increased lake levels is that it's actually gone. So we usually would be walking along the footpath or along the shorelines, there's actually native plants coming up there. So they've been able to sort of temporarily have a release from the pressure of where the littoral zone and the lake weed is and replenish. And that's all it takes. They just need to replenish and then drop seed and then you've got another round of viability.
The other part I've heard him talk about is the higher lake levels seem or have possibly impacted breeding for catfish and their habitats. Can you speak to that at all?
I mean, yeah, we see there's a correlation. We don't know whether it's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it could be around the pressure, it could be around the temperature, in terms of affecting that breeding. Yeah, but we certainly see since the lake levels have gone up, we've definitely had a increase in catfish catch.
If I could just add to that, it's also due to where we're currently I guess, nesting because of how they burrow into the side banks of the lake edge. And because of the water levels being so high, they don't get that fluctuation of having less current coming into the breeding holes or where they're situated. And the levels being so high going up into the lake levels is kind of, I guess, drowning out that small pocket that they have. That's another reason of that. So everything's, again, correlation, but that's part of the reason as well.
Thank you. Just because lake levels have been mentioned a few times, I just wonder if TOP have had any thoughts or have any thoughts around the sustained continued high levels of the lake, understanding that as councils we have statutory duties, but also there are discussions or questions being asked about things like managed retreat, which in particular affect our Māori communities. So I just wonder if those have been part of any of your thoughts at the moment.
No, I'll probably just be sharing personal opinions. Yeah, I think, you know, our input into the new lake level committee group will be able to understand a bit more about how we sit on the fence with this. But yeah, it's a conversation.
And I look forward to being able to have those discussions all together as well as part of that group.
I call for a mover and a seconder to receive this concise and on-point report. By Mayor Tapsell, Councillor Brown, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.
Well done.
Thank you, Sueta.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is a verbal update from Ministry for the Environment. So, Irina, kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou, and kei te mihi ki ngā mema hau ki te paore or the statutory group, and also mihi kia koe, Darren, in terms of your new role with the trust. So I'm Lorena, I'm work within the policy implementation division, and really today what I wanted to just bring your attention to is probably just 4 things, one being with the enactment of the Spatial Planning Act and the Natural and Built Environment Act coming into train. Secondly, in terms of the consultation that's happening around the National Policy Statement for Natural Hazards. Also some further work that's continuing with the National Planning Framework, which is a regime under the Natural and Built Environment Act. And then finally, just in terms of some further refinements to the National Policy Statement for the Highly Productive Land. So as you'll be aware, the Spatial Planning Act and Natural and Built Environment Act came into effect on the 24th of August. It is going to take some time in terms of transitioning completely to those bills. We are estimating a 10-year period. So there is a lot of consideration that's required in terms of how we approach it from the existing regime under the current under the Resource Management Act through to this new one. So we're working quite closely with our partners, representatives from local government, also our treaty partners, and also the sector in terms of finding ways to take that forward. There are some components under the new law that came into effect immediately, including the fast track consenting for certain housing and infrastructure development, new maximum duration for the new freshwater related consents, changes to the council enforcement powers and penalties, changes to the management of contaminated land, changes to aquaculture management, and also changes to who can apply to be a requiring authority. There is some guidance that's available on our website, but these are the initial ones that we've put into play just because we know there was an immediate need for information on what that means in terms of implementing those regimes. Over the coming months, we are looking at providing further information guidance and when necessary training, and doing that in a way where we work closely with our partners and the sector to find appropriate ways that will support the implementation of the new regime. We are mindful with the elections at this particular time, the impending elections, and what that might mean going forward. So we're doing what we need to do right now, and then planning in terms of what might eventuate post the elections. A new national policy statement for natural hazards decision making came out for consultation on the 18th of September, and consultation period will close on the 13th of November. But the purpose of this particular NPS is to support local government with decision making on new development in areas that are at high risk from natural hazards, to try and manage risks for people, property from natural hazards such as floods, landslides, and coastal areas, particularly what we've seen in the previous few months. It is going to be something that will be developed over the next 1 to 2 years, but there will be some consultation that's happening, and I will find out when how that will happen within your particular rohe to make sure you're aware of when the team will be coming to you on that. In June, at the end of June, we had started some initial hui around transitioning what we've got, I think, about 23 national policy statements into a national planning framework. That work is continuing, and we're looking at having targeted engagement on the statutory engagement draft through to the remainder of this year. There are a few things that are happening that we need to consider that are probably new in this particular area. Is really around, so it'll continue to look at the national consolidation of national policy framework for freshwater and urban development, but there are some new areas that we're looking at, national direction for infrastructure, environmental limits and targets, which is going to be a key feature for the new resource management regimes. And also the relationship of iwi and hapu with their taonga. So that'll continue. We are anticipating with the progression of the national planning framework that a final version will come into effect around mid-2025. And finally, there has been further updates to the national policy statement for highly productive lands that we're seeking further input into. But this is really to address concerns that have been raised about how the current plan restricts the development of activities that are not relying on highly productive land. In particular, it's looking at areas of renewable electricity generation. We've seen an increase in consents for solar panels on land, but also intensive indoor primary production, particularly around indoor for poultry and mushroom farms, and also greenhouses. So we are seeking feedback, particularly on those particular areas, and the consultation around that is open till the 31st of October. So those are the key things that we're progressing at the moment. But as I said, we are taking a considered approach given the elections in terms of how much we engage on at this particular time. So that's me. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Lorena. Any questions, members at all? If not, can I have a mover and a second to receive that verbal update? It's absolutely Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Lorena.
Kia ora.
Okay, moving on to item 8.7, update report from Rotorua Lakes Council.
Morning all, morena tatu katoa. I'll take the report as read. I just would like to make a couple of key summary notes. Our key reticulation projects are progressing. Rotorua, so the rotating rotoma is progressing at the moment. We're getting close to the 3/4 mark in terms of the east rotating installations. some delays there because of or slow pace because of lake levels and Maori agreement that takes some time to be consolidated, but hopefully with this weather patterns will accelerate the program again. Our wastewater treatment plan is progressing with reloading and on-site work. Our elected members are due to go and visit the site at the end of October to have a 3D dimensional presentation about what their plans entails to do, but the concerns are in place and monitored, and we're working at the moment to identify the sustainable forest discharge approach, consenting procedures for the upgraded treatment plan, and obviously working there with Manawhenua and the foreign stream monitoring system. The Arawa articulation scheme, another sort of major environmental sort of targets area. The stage 1 is in progress. I think about 9 kilometers of trunk mains have been installed, and right now we're just identifying the location in the installation of the 2 main pumps to convey wastewater from Arawa towards Okareka. The stage 2 tenders that's been agreed by the council in April have been progressed throughout June. A result was received at the end of July. We were too short for the next infrastructure and environment committee meeting on the 2nd of August to report to that, but we reported on the 6th of April or September. And the committee has agreed to the recommendations, and we are right now in the process of updating the community about the results of that of those stage 2 tenders. The letters, comprehensive letters, and compliance information will go to all the community on Monday. Takes 2-3 days for the post to deliver all these sort of things, but we're giving an opportunity to the community to have another input and feedback into that process by the end of October. And we anticipate once the feedback is received from them, we will enter into a contract for stage 2 to start works in early 2024, which is quite aligned well with the stage 1 because we want stage 1 to progress further. So as we do on-property installations, those can be aligned more seamlessly together. Stormwater comprehensive concern, you heard about lake levels and flooding risks and retreats and so on. Obviously, the Rotorua Council is now implementing its comprehensive stormwater management process, and we are assisted through the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, which I anticipate will got a value of about $120 million over the next 7 years. And basically, we are following the approach where we need to achieve both quantitative and qualitative improvements to the management of stormwater. And the resource concerns are in with the regional council at this point in time, and we expect some technical evaluation and discussion with our partners. Take it from there and progress it. But the first attenuation scheme of Linton Park West has almost completed. It's about 500,000 cubic meters of attenuation going to be achieved there with some significant improvements to the downstream conveyance. We're doing some more work on the Udahina channel to identify potential improvements in the channel to assist further in the management of stormwater. And we're working with the Belfast Regional Council to assess the best options. In terms of our planning policy and strategy, the future development strategy for the council has been out for consultations and the hearings. Number of hearings were established. Most of the feedback is in support, and obviously we are working also with Plan Change 9, and the commissioners will review the submissions in November to make some decisions or take some direction to that effect. And again, it's quite important to align all these sort of actions, treatment plan, stormwater management, water supplies, regulations, with our council's key priorities, which is going to be environmental improvements, economic improvements, community safety, and housing. All those infrastructure interventions enable those key priorities of the council and are fully aligned with that. We are undertaking at the moment the Natural Hazards Policy Review, which with regards to how we align our stormwater implementation plan with flood risk, and obviously with the Fairfield Regional Council's geothermal plan as is being constructed at the moment, and the geothermal risks arising from the presence of geothermal activity under Rotorua, which covers about 25% of our urban environment, and with a number of development concerns that are progressing, which addressing what are aimed to address our housing shortages and the housing targets over the next 10 to 20 years. I will leave it at that and have you take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions, members? If there aren't any, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Leader. Councillor Brown. Was that a question?
Question, Chair.
Okay, sorry, question.
Stavros, say you're at liberty, because the last time we discussed stage 2 at Tarawera, I think the first RFP was about 17 and you want to get it down to 12 or 13. Were you successful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Oh, just again, some numbers, Stavros. For the Rotorua sewage scheme, you said you're about 3/4 of the way through. And are you within the budget of that 53 million that was put out there some time ago?
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are close to that budget. I think it's just that, repeatedly in my report recently, lake water levels at the moment, some extra cost of dewatering and so on, but we'll be within that proximity at the moment. Timing, as I said, is slowing down because it takes much longer to install a system now with the dewatering procedures around it, but we are within that range, of 53 to 55, and we'll work together to consolidate.
And just a courtesy for us 3 regional councillors, when you take your councillors to visit sites like the wastewater treatment plant and the forest discharge, can you invite us as well? We'd love to see what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Just to so that, because we get asked questions as well, and sometimes don't know is not an answer for us.
No, we'll do it provided. No, there's nothing, no objection to that at all, provided your timings.
Yeah. Just send us flick us an invite.
Yeah, I'll work with Helen in a Korea, which can act as a liaison, because again, key projects like lake levels, Tarawera, I will share information with Helen, and obviously if Helen can work with you on calendars, be more than happy.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Can I just say we'll really welcome that opportunity. Often Stavros and our group managers are at the whim of us when we say, hey, we really want to go check that out. So we did request that meeting, and apologies hadn't considered that, but very happy to in future. And if there were no further questions, I just had one other update to include.
Sure.
Well, I just wanted to actually acknowledge the time and the passion that we've had in our current but now retiring Chief Executive. So if you hadn't heard the news, Chief Executive Jeff Williams is recently announced his retirement. Today is actually his last day. So he's got a big bunch of flowers on his desk and some staff over there that will be enjoying a lunch for him. But really just, I know our environment, but also especially our relationship with iwi has been very important to him over the 10 years that he served us as Chief Executive. So just wanted to, this group, update you on his retirement, and also just thank and acknowledge the time that he has given us. In the meantime, we will obviously be going out for recruitment, so we look forward to introducing our new Chief Executive to you in the coming months. But did want to also let you know that we are in the very strong and stable hands of Gina Rangi. So Gina Rangi will be our interim CEO in the meantime.
Bravo. Thank you for that update. I just want to pass on my mihi to Jeff for his time at the Lakes Council, his involvement in the strategy group as well. What time will he be at Wakamoa?
5:01.
Okay, calling for a mover and a seconder to receive the RSC report. And Councillor Brown and Mariana seconded. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Thank you, Ross. Okay, Chris is going to give the program status update, including Moata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to pass these around to start with. These are just today's update of the current lake levels. For the first page is the Rotorua, Rotorua, and the other pages are Lake Rotorua and Lake Rotorua. And you'll see that Rotorua and Rotorua are declining now a little bit, but not. I think this is relevant to our first presenter today, who warned us that of course they could bounce back up again. It's not one summer does not fix this, which is a very good point. But also just noting that Rotorua and Rotorua are now within active in their operating ranges, which I think Stavros and I feel a lot more comfortable than we were at our last meeting when there's all these lakes were high. So we're back in the black, I guess. But that pertains to what we're going to report on in terms of the new technical working group as well. But I'll start off with the Sorry. So I'm Helen Cray today, and apologies to Helen, she's got a family emergency that she had to. So forgive me if I don't have all the knowledge that she has. But the report that she's written is really just to be taken as read. It is our normal annual report on the work program. And I click the button. Here we go. So, oh look, I've already covered the first bullet point. The second one was Awananga, which others probably know more about than I. And the third one is about land use change. So these are really just key points that come out of the program annual report, which is in your agenda packs. So if you've got any questions on that report, we will try and answer them, but other than that, I'll just take this and that's probably the A3 page, isn't it? The attachment 2. These are the pages I always look at when I look at these reports. This tells us what the state of our lakes are at, both from a physiochemical point of view and a biological point of view. And so I was looking at this before and I thought, hey, we're not doing too bad with the blues and greens, but then you see the 10-year trends, there's a lot of red in there. And this is the climate change piece that I think Soweto was talking about earlier. And it's so good to hear we've got that funding, because this is going to be critical from a strategic point of view for this group to manage going forward. Is what we've got the lakes maybe under control to some extent now, but what about in 20 years time, 50 years time? What's that going to look like? So I think that dashboard is the one to keep an eye on. But my summary is I'm very heartened by the way the three organisations are working together, both at political level and at staff level. So, and we work very hard to make that continue. So that's really all I wanted to say. There's a lot of good work going on. We've heard from Soweto, there's a lot of good work going on across the board. Okay. So you're going to speak to this one? I wasn't there.
Well, I can't say what school it is. Helen's out pretty much daily working with her. So yeah, she's going to be nice.
I think she's holding the catfish, right?
Yeah.
So this is the work that's going on every day.
Yes.
And another photo. Yes. And there's Helen. So again, we're working with the kids, the next generation of Takiaki.
And I can speak to that particular example is that there's work being done at Livermore School to restore the stream. But Helen's been working very hard with the school to control weeds and plants along the stream that runs through the school.
Okay, so this is going back to that dashboard where I'm feeling uncomfortable sitting. So Rotorua and Kakehi a little bit above their target 3-year TLI. But I think we have 3 lakes within the TLI and another 2 that are just, well, they are within, but if you look at the 3-year average, they're not. So looking at both of those things in parallel. Obviously, we've got this national policy statement, region-wide plan change, and we've got a presentation coming up from Gemma on that. Yeah, we just recommend that we adopt the Rotorua Code for 22-23 as is required by the deed funding for our colleagues in NMP. I'll now hand over to Rosemary. Onto the computer.
Stephen. Sorry, I had it yes just now.
So while we're waiting, if you're looking at the annual report, the wetlands work that Rosemary's leading off is under the category of engineering solutions in terms of the deed funded work program. So that's an area that also funds the work that Stavros is doing, I believe, under the deed. So gives you a bit of context.
Okay. As Chris just explained, the constructed wetlands project is part of the engineering solutions. And just an update to where we're at. I think earlier on to give a heads up on what we were working on. Our first wetland that's fairly well progressed, not in terms of construction, but in terms of getting the project underway, is situated in the Upper Moringa catchment it's actually on the Winiata property. So you can see it's right at the head of the catchment. Moringa catchment is 8,000 hectares in area and does have a number of dairy farms in it. And there's obviously some challenges within that catchment in terms of water quality. And Winiatas have very generously given over a good proportion of their land to convert back into a wetland.
They've had a long-term focus on being an organic farm, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was the wish of Tom, who is the kuru of the current generation, to re-wet a large area of the property adjoining the Waikarugu wetland at the head of that catchment. So we've been able to help them realise Tom's wishes, and we're now working on not restoring because there's no wetland there at the moment, but blocking the drains and re-wetting the wetland soils that are there and planting them out. You can see from this aerial shot, the drains that we're talking about from here and coming here. And so we've had our wetland designers come up with a plan, and they've identified that there's several different types of wetlands on this property: swamp, fen, marsh, sedgeland and upland areas. And they're looking at recreating the vegetation and ecosystem that was once on that property. So this is a general outline of the design to date, with the Waikarugu wetland up here in the northeastern area. It involves blocking deep drains and then other drains just recontouring them so that the water will keep flowing. We are looking at using locally sourced material for erosion control in some of the areas where the water will be flowing. At the moment, we're looking at sourcing ponga logs from the Timberlands, CNI land, and they've generously given us permission to take ponga logs out of there, which will be used, stacked up to help control erosion on the banks of that area. We don't want to be importing, in material. We want to actually use material that's locally sourced, natural material that will eventually break down, and it fits in with the kaupapa of the whole project. We're also been talking to Sawera about perhaps using upi mat to potentially control weeds in the dryland areas before the plants take over. This is actually a very weedy site. It's got a lot of blackberry and a lot of gorse on it, so we need to protect our plantings until they can take off. And so that's the woven ufi mat. There's another ufi called tupuna, which is actually bundles of harakeki that are left over from the weaving process. So potentially we'll be trying some of that for erosion control. Again, we think that's a really nice way to incorporate Motuanga Māori into our wetland. And it's also, I understand, a byproduct of the weaving process. So it's a really good story. So we're also looking at another site at 31 Nongataho Road, which will ring a bell for a lot of people in this room. It's a potential subdivision that's going in out there on Waititi Stream, but it also has a remnant wetland on the property. So we've been working, I'll just go back a bit. So this is the property. This time it's at the bottom of the catchment and the Waititi Stream, that's the property there. And the Waititi catchment is 7,000 hectares. So again, quite a large catchment. It's got quite a lot of intensive farming in the catchment. The Waititi Stream consistently fails its water quality objectives. So this site is on the side of a former swamp, the Tiako swamp, and is drained by the Rotorua Stream. So it's quite a modified area. It's been historically drained for farming. And you can actually see from this drone footage the drains that are running through the property. And this is the Rotorua Stream. The Tiako swamp is basically encompasses what goes onto the other property, encompasses this area here. So we've been working with the developers to develop a wetland design which will not only treat groundwater entering the site, but will also treat storm water that's coming off the development. So this is a layout of the design to date, which seems to be being constantly tweaked. But we've got the first the first two cells are the groundwater treatment wetland, and the other three cells here are the stormwater treatment wetlands. However, we do need to protect our groundwater treatment wetland in the event of flooding. So the stormwater wetland cell 2B it actually forms a swale that will protect the groundwater wetland from inundation. We don't want frequent inundation events in our groundwater wetland because it destroys the bugs and the organisms that we need to treat the water. We think that's going to represent a really good outcome for the housing development, for groundwater and the public amenity, for biodiversity. Again, the plan is to restore the area to the ecology that was there originally. So it's not just a hole in the ground with a few reeds planted around it. It will contribute significantly to the biodiversity, and we think we will get up to 1 tonne of nitrogen out of the lake through this wetland, and another tonne from the Wynyard wetland.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, so that's my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions at all?
Thank you, Rosemary. You mentioned about, I guess, returning to the original state of what it was. And I didn't quite hear properly, but are you looking locally? So you're sourcing locally to ensure that you're getting plants locally, so we've got our own endemism happening?
Absolutely. Okay. So we've started the procurement for the plants within the wetland. We're looking at commencing construction for the year. And one of the criteria was that they are sourced from the Central North Island ecological area.
Okay. Next, maybe this question is for you, Suita, with the mention of Ufi, and that's, I'm assuming that's currently on land as you're dealing with those. So the style of Ufi that will be used, is that relating to the Mokihi type style, which is that bundled method?
Yeah, so we just met about it yesterday, so it's just recent, but we would say that that's probably the better method to use.
Thicker.
Yeah, it's thicker. It's also, I mean, the problem with putting it in the lakes was its buoyancy, but we don't have that problem here. And it's also the whole sustainable. It's the hara left over from the weaving, so it's got that sustainable element as well. Also.
And lastly, great that you've got efforts going on for out at Waititi. Just further up on the corner of Waititi is a small wetland that was restored a few years ago with a dear friend, Lake Bella Tate, and that could contribute to the wetland that you are doing, because the stream also runs under the road and comes out at Okahu or Kurararo, I think it's called. Anyway, but these whānau there that are willing to participate to enhance their wetland that's already been established. So that might be a good key point as well.
Okay.
Just to show the collaboration within the Otaha community would be good.
Thank you, Mary. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Rosemary, how much over the limits, the nitrogen leaching limits is the Waititi stream? You said it's always over the limit at the moment.
I can't tell you that off the top of my head, Councillor White, but we can certainly come back to you.
But yeah, it's more to do with the E. coli, so it's a swimmability test. So
Okay, swimmability rather than.
Yeah, and it's, I think both it and the Monta stream have traditionally been consistently failing, probably by quite a bit, I suspect.
I'm pleased that the Waititi is being addressed in this type of manner, because I'm very much aware that one of the, well, actually the very first nitrogen incentive group was from the headwaters of the Waititi, and quite a significant reduction at that time from that particular person, that particular farmer. So it's nice to see it. Ultimately, it all adds up.
And that particular landowner has done a second incentive student as well, so it has reduced even further.
That's great.
Yeah, which is really good news.
I'll go Mayor Tips, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a question around the 9 hectare wetland in the upper Ferdinand catchment. It's a very simple question, sorry, but what's the funding that goes into that? Where does the funding come from?
From the 50-ton engineering solution. Yeah, it's from the program. Yeah.
Yeah, oh gosh, it slipped my mind, but it's something that you said that prompted me to say it. Oh, actually, it's about one of the waterways through the Whiriwano Otaha. And it's good to know that you and Haka are inclusive, but I'll be quite interested to see their thoughts on one of those streams, because it's actually called Tupāpakurua Stream.
I think that's actually above where we're constructing the wetland.
Cool.
Yes, yeah. So the wetland doesn't encroach on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Kuringa, wetland, it's right at the top of the catchment, and did I hear it was an organic farm?
Yes.
And sorry, what was the prospective reduction in nitrogen that you expect to get to that?
800 kilos to 1 tonne. There are farms about quite intensive farms, so it's not right at the top of the catchment.
Right.
And you know, we've had some very high nitrogen readings. We've got bores in, piezometers in, and we're doing regular groundwater monitoring, and we've had some really, really high rates of nitrogen.
Sorry, it's probably in here, I missed it. What was the cost of it?
We haven't costed it yet because we haven't got the final bill of quantities from our designers. We've got the final design, but to give you a meaningful cost, we need the bill of quantities.
Okay, does that come back to here, to this committee?
Yes, I can bring that back. Yes.
Thank
you. It's on page 62, Mr. Chair, in terms of the engineering solutions. There's 213,000 in the 22-23 spend. So.
Yeah, that's to date.
Yeah.
And that's mainly design work.
Yeah.
We believe that by putting money up front and getting a really good design, we will maximise the nitrogen.
Really good story that the Winiata people have always been focused on organic farming. And Tom Winiata, bless him, passed on. His children actually picked up that whole kaupapa and are really pushing hard and giving that thread at their head on Huarenga. It's really nice to know that we've got those types of farms and those types of communities actually really coming to the fore and helping through. So, yeah.
And sometime in the first quarter of the new year, we extend an invitation to the group to come and have a look at the work that we've done, because we think we will have completed construction and at least have some of it dating done.
Phil, did you see? Through you, Chair. Just actually going back to the dashboard report, and Chris, I won't put you on the spot. It's really just a comment, because you had mentioned about the TLIs and yearly and 3 yearly averages, and it's really important that we're looking at the 3 yearly average, and I'd actually say a 5 yearly average would be good for us to see. And I just wanted to make the comment that it's really disappointing that we don't seem to be improving as the years go on. We're getting close to our targets, but we seem to have stalled on those. And I think after so many years of work on this and so much money spent, I kind of feel like we need a bit of a reinvention about how we can take that next step to actually achieve the TLIs that we set as targets, because we never seem to get there. So just a comment, just to remind us why we're here in a way, or partly why we're here.
And possibly the science review that's just been done. I wish I had Andy next to me now, but there was a science review done just recently with the our monitoring operations committee. And I'm not sure if the professor Dennis Oskandusky was talking about looking at TLIs as a method of monitoring and whether it is actually the optimal measure. That's why we've got a range of measures here. Physiochemical, because we recognise the TLI is good, but it was really developed.
It's a very simplified measure, and I think the community, Lakes Water Quality Society, for instance, has been asking for a wider measure for considerable time. I think the Arawa Lakes Trust supports that as well.
That research will feed into.
Mayor Tips will Councillor.
Thank you. And sorry, I was just trying to understand, and this is my first year into this, so apologies that some of the questions may be simple, but just in terms of that funding, because I understand that there's the annual programs, but I just really wanted to ensure that money wasn't being diverted from elsewhere to be completing it. Yeah, so it was all what was. Thank you. And then also just some feedback that that the Barakini Regional Council staff have been very helpful with our work with the Puringa reference group as well. So thank you very much for that.
Well, just Chris, just want to get back to this question I answered during my absence this morning, but the lake levels, and I want to put this on the table that I know that iwi, particularly Ngāti Kahiao, have been concerned about the rising lake levels and the Okere gates. Right? And there is some difference information floating around that area. I think it would be really, really good to really clarify some of that information, so that there is not a level of, dare I say, conspiracy around the closing and opening of the gates, that is set within a particular regulatory environment, and that is maintained and adhered to, and that is a direction following from high up from Rowena and the crew from MFE. Well, I think I've got that right, and so yeah, I just wanted to make that note because it's a very important issue. You know, the rising of the levels. We look at Murray and the Oho Channel. If you look at the overall impacts of the opening and closing of the gates for recreation, all of that. So people do need to understand, you know, the clarity around that regulatory requirement to maintain that during levels of high rainfall, low rainfall, and how the gates operate within that context. Just dropping that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could bring a presentation to the next meeting if that's desired by members on how that happens, because it is complicated and it is misunderstood.
Yeah, it is misunderstood, and I would like it actually brought to this table so that in fact we can clear it up. And because I know from Ngāti Kahiao's point of view, New Zealand and their interest in original, you know, that's coming up. That comes up with their Kōweke group, and I get a bit concerned about the level of information sometimes that's passed through. I'm not challenging it at all, but I think it's right that there should be some real clarity around it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know what is noting, but remember, we are establishing a technical working group to start an evaluation of climate change and its impacts on our general receiving environment, including lake levels, and how we currently manage all these lake levels in our streams and urban systems and so on. And the working group would report to the strategy group on a regular level. So I would suggest, and Chris can have his view obviously about it, but I think we should allow a working group, a working party to start considering all these issues, because we're not sure whether what we currently do is the things we'll be doing in the future either. So I think it'd be good if the technical working party gets together, exchanges views, understands what is happening at the moment, why is it happening, and then report to the strategy group. Otherwise, we're bypassing that process. And in my mind is that if we're going to bypass that process, why do we have a technical working group in the first place?
I think my comment really was just what is the current status? Yeah. What is the current status? I don't think that necessarily impacts on what the group might want to do and how they might look at it. But the current status and the current requirements is this. Okay. And I think that's important just to clarify that for our community out
there. Just relating to that in the operation of the Okere gates, because I sat on the chair the liaison group for that for a number of years, and I think it is misunderstood how it works. So it could be good to bring it here. It is a very narrow range that the lake operates in. When we talk about it being high, we're normally talking of a range of about 200 mil. So yeah, clarifying how that actually works. And there is an assumption by some people that it's managed to favour whitewater rafters or fishermen or whatever, and that's not necessarily the case. It's a lot of it's determined by the flow in from Rotorua and the flow that therefore has to go out of Rotorua.
I've also heard it said that,
and protecting Kaituni as well.
Mr. Chair, through you, have also heard it said that it may have impacts on Rotorua levels. I don't know how, But that's the sort of comment you get unless we actually clear it up.
Yeah.
That can send all sorts of emotions out there and that we could well do without, understand that it's a high emotional issue, but we need to have that clarity.
Any further questions at all?
I was going to ask myself a question. Sorry, Chair.
I hope you get the right answer.
If it helps, you go for it.
I think we were remiss in writing this report, that there should probably be a third recommendation that refers to the terms of reference for the new report, for the new technical working group for climate change impacts that Stavros and I and others have put together. So that's on page 98, 99, 100 of the agenda pack. And just, I guess we were seeking input from members on the wording of that terms of reference, but we probably should have written specifically mentioned that. I think that's a bit of an oversight, so my apologies for that. But if we could fix it by adding a third recommendation to page 42, just to say adopts the terms of reference with any amendments you might have.
I've got that down as a separate item following this one, so we'll just put it up there. If that's
okay.
Yep. Sure. So calling for a mover and a second of the two resolutions. Firstly, that we received the report, the status update and the Pūrongo Ātau. And the second part of the resolution is to approve the Pūrongo Ātau, or the annual report, for submission to the Ministry of Environment as per the requirements of the deed of funding. Can I have a mover and seconder? Buddy in the move, seconded Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Do you want to talk to the technical? There is a report on page 98.
Sorry, I didn't realise there was a separate report for it. Stavros, did you want to come and join me? This was something that we've worked on together with Terra Lakes as well. Discussions. Did you want to join us here in this? I think it's fairly self-evident. We just found a terms of reference draft and we put it together, and really the questions were from memory, Stavros, mostly around membership and reporting frequency, and I guess the purpose had already been set by this group at the last meeting, so we put the context in there and the objectives. So yeah.
Any questions from members?
No? So just what's the timing for all of this? I might have missed it. Timing to get this up and running next year.
If the strategic group is agreeable to these recommendations, we will set our first meeting sometime in October. And the intention is to meet every monthly. And then we'll have a broad scope of recommendations to the strategy group by June 2024. That's the whole idea. I think it's just from our perspective, the genesis of this work, it was that the last 18 months we have experienced extremely wet weather. That wet weather resulted in near risks for flooding. High lake levels, and as you know, from our communities, we get them, we know the background to that. And the whole idea here is to get a collective group together, which will be informed some expertise, which technical expertise to help, there and ask some fundamental questions. And I think when you heard this morning from the presenter from Rotorua, the spectrum of interventions really are two, in consideration. One is that let nature do what nature does, don't touch it. But then if you do that, then it negates a whole range of other things we do because we already intervene with nature. And I think the term that the young man used was just a mechanical assistance, to nature. So the spectrum is that do nothing or to total management of natural events, and the reality probably is somewhere in between. The question is to ask ourselves, what are the most cost-effective and viable and sustainable options to take going on in the future? If lake levels are detrimental to the well-being of our lakes communities, including mana whenua and traditional grounds and other considerations, then what's the best way to intervene, not just on the lakes, but in all the systems that feed into the lakes? No? For example, at the moment, Lake Rotorua, even in a dry day, it receives somewhere in the region of 20-25 cubic meters per second, through surface runoff and groundwater. I know how channel discharges about 37 cubic meters per second. So with a constant inflow into the lake, and you have an exceptionally high rain, will bring 35 million cubic meters of water into the lake. But how channel discharges only a fraction of that. So we need to ask the question: how do we want, taking a 100-year horizon, what's the best way, to address it? And we don't have the answers yet, but as Chris said, we'll work collaboratively together. We get some expert advice from all parties, and we report regularly to you, to a group, the strategy group, to some potential options.
Questions from members at all?
More a comment, under 3.2 objectives, discussing the mana whenua, through the future development strategy hearings process, we heard from Te Tato Arawa around their position on managed retreat. And they are crystal clear that they do not accept that they will be pushed off their lands because of high lake levels. So I think this work is important not only for the lake and the environment, the Māori of Hawaii, but also the upstream effects of the groundwater and the effects of the people that surround the lake. So this is a really important piece of work to get right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole range of key considerations, because obviously the amount of water that gets attenuated into the lake has got flow-on effect upstream. On the other hand, the amount of water attenuated into the lake has got flow-on effect downstream too. So we really need to balance all these elements together, and there are different views, there are different aspects to the whole thing. And again, if you recall the report we put in front of the strategy on 23rd of June, basically said we will, as a group, as a technical group, use multi-criteria analysis, canvassing all these considerations before we arrive at any recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that, that we'll have a mixture of, strategic thinkers, the more technical people. Yeah. We're trying to get a multidisciplinary lens across the problem, because this problem is not going to get easier, it's going to get worse over time. So we might as well start thinking about it now and bouncing it from the technical group that we're involved in back to the elected members around this table and back and forth in that way. Hopefully it should take us forward. I would have expected that one of the first things we'll be looking for is some sort of a statement of what is the Tamawhenua perspective on this problem. Because I think until we have that, we don't really know what our boundaries are. So yeah.
Councillor Winters?
Yeah, I think there's a really big issue there, Chris, because under the dealer settlement for the lake beds transferred, the lake is defined as the wetted area. The lake bed is defined as the wetted area of the lake. And when you've got tide ranges, I mean, in a coastal area, mean high water spring is the boundary. And below that is foreshore and seabed. Above that is private property and whatever. But we have a moving boundary. And I think part of your work will be to define the boundary for when the tide comes in and out. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was about to make the same comment about the lakes are just claiming back. That's all we're doing. We're just claiming back. As much as we may say that they're actually, the lake levels have risen, in my view, the lakes are just claiming back to what was once there before we established ourselves. So with that moving lake bed, looking at the managed retreat would be something that would I guess collectively we'll need to look further into that, but I do support these TIRs. But again, we also need to think globally with the ocean atmospheric system and with all the planetary boundaries that have been breached. 6 out of the 9 that have breached, and only ocean acidification is the next thing up, and that will hit us from our coastal boundaries of Maketu coming inland. So this is a must. It's not a should be, it is a must.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Phil first.
Yes. Thank you, Chair, and through you, look, just a comment, I know we've got some representatives from Rotorua here, and welcome. And I know Rotorua and Rotorua community is taking a real interest in what this group is discussing this year with the high lake levels, to say the least, out at Rotorua and Rotorua. So we had a public meeting in June, and we touched on it at the last meeting when we were talking about establishing this working group, that it was desirable to establish a subgroup specifically looking at the issues for Rotorua and Rotorua. So I just want to assure our community that that is covered off in the objectives here, 3.3, which is receive advice from representatives of Rotorua, Rotorua, mana whenua, and members of the community, and liaise with that community on options and recommendations. And I've been working with Stavros and Helen on the makeup of that group that we'll be using to engage with that community. So now if this is signed off today, then I'll go ahead at setting that group up for Rotorua and Rotorua as well. They will feed their feedback in to the parent working group.
Thank you, Phil, and I think it's an important point to raise that there's the two streams of work here. There's the overall impact of climate change across all of the lakes, and then there's the short-term issues that we face at Rotorua. Okay, Councillor.
Just very quickly, Councillor Brown raised the issue around Tato basically saying that we won't be pushed off the land. I think that if you want to interpret that, is that they will need to be consulted with, they'll need to be engaged in the process, because they will move, as has been explained from Mariana, as and when nature is taking its course, and they will move with that, but they need to be involved like community in the conversations before those determinations are made. And that's the complexity, I think, that Councillor Winters has raised around the ebbing and flowing of the boundaries and how people are engaged in that conversation and understanding with clarity what that means and the solutions that may need to be found in the best interest of everyone.
Any further questions or comments? I call for a mover and a seconder for the two resolutions you can see up there. Receive the report and then approve the TOR. Mayor Tipsel. Yep. Seconder. Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Thank you, Chris and Stavros. Okay, 8.10, our final item, Central Freshwater Policy Program Update. There's that presented by Tuma.
And so I can have a peek at my presentation too. Everyone, I'm Gemma, no much to you. Right, the next slide. Gemma, there's a picture. Oh, I've got one here. Awesome. Okay, so this is just a quick update. It's our final engagement this afternoon at the Turunanga Tea Rooms. If anyone wants to come join, we'll be there from 2 to 5. We've had 2 since the last meeting, with not necessarily lots of participants attending, but valuable feedback from those that did, and some staying for up to 4 hours. At the moment, we're taking feedback in person at those events, online through our Participate website and through hard copy versions. We have our Freshwater Flash newsletter that goes out about, I think, every month or 2, and it keeps people up to date with where we're up to, what opportunities they have to come to our government events and things like that. Just an update on Tantatino engagement. There's been a refocus on supporting the current projects
and relationships we've had rather than the Huiarohi events. So we've had one Huiarohi event for the Okure area, but the second one that we presented on last time didn't go ahead. We continue to have ongoing invitation to engage with any tangata whenua groups that want to be involved in our process. This is just to give you a bit of an idea of the sort of feedback we've had at the recent events. So key concerns or comments were a lack of capacity to apply for Te Mana o Te Wai funding. So iwi and hapu groups that are organised and can get people along to volunteer days and planting and those sorts of things, but they didn't necessarily have the volunteers or capacity to apply for funding that was available. Bank erosion and water quality in the Utahina stream was a concern. Questions about how climate change fits into the freshwater plan change process, both in terms of the management options we might propose and also the impact of climate change on our lakes, which are on top of. Concerns about algal blooms, catfish, swans, Canadian geese, weeds, sewage leak at Nongataha and legacy issues from the dump, concerns about emerging contaminants, water bottling, emergency discharge from wastewater treatment plant, timing of alum dosing. There was a lot of discussion about possible management options for farming. So our document has a bunch of options that we'll come to in the next slide, and also a point that we should also look into forestry practices as well and potentially regulate against those as well, and the potential for native species links. So these are some of the management options that we're getting feedback on regionally at the moment. Some are pretty hot topics for our farming community, particularly restrictions on grazing of steep 25-degree plus erosion prone land and riparian setbacks. So there are also central government regulations on riparian setbacks, and we're looking at additional regional rules as well. The freshwater farm plan regulations, which once again are central government requirements, but potentially regional council adding additional minimum standards, and also requiring that farm input data is provided to regional council. Controlling intensive grazing, once again, there are central government regulations, but looking at whether we require any additional provisions for our region. Sediment control bunds is a big one for Rotorua lakes, which some of you will have already heard about, but looking at ways to provide for those in our plan. Capping rules similar to Rule 11 that's already in some of our lakes, and plantation, forestry, harvesting, management plans, and improved resource efficiency. This is a very brief little update on water quantity, because I'm sure we haven't provided that. Not a huge issue in terms of not enough water quantity in the lakes, as a general rule. But
We've got some we can give you.
Yeah, you can see there are a couple of red spots at the moment, which are municipal takes, and I believe RLC is working with iwi on reconsenting with those sorts of ones, and I think we might be on the outskirts of those sorts of projects as well. And this big one, Nongataha, shown in red, is actually not a consumptive use, so it's just an accounting one. But generally, in other parts of the region, there's a little bit more of the red warning signs. And same with groundwater as well. So all green, all happy, there's plenty of water underground. Questions?
Thank you. And apologies, I do have to leave, but I did just have a question around the residual water flow expectations in streams. Just really, if it is being taken into consideration, our council ability to use that water for obviously our community. So community supplies, and that just any risk of undersupply may need to force us to create infrastructure elsewhere to source water for our community. So just ensuring that very basic but very necessary part of how we use and consume that water is also being considered.
Yes, so one of the values in the National Policy Statement for Fresh Water is drinking water supply. However, it is subservient to ecosystem health. So in the instance that it was ruled that it's more important for the ecosystem to have the water, then there is potential for alternative infrastructure requirements further down the track. So I would recommend that RLC be on top of what it's looking like, but I can pass you on to the Glennis.
Don't worry, we are. We are
Yeah.
up to what.
Yeah. We also have a territorial local authority group that gets together and they get notified of all of these sorts of freshwater projects that we're working on. So someone in council will know what we're up to.
Further questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned the potential for native species lakes. That rings in my ear as we've just spoken about the looking at temporarily lake closure, especially in Rotorua. We know Rotorua has a good possibility of returning to its pristine state that it once was. Therefore, if we were to go down that path, the potential for native species lakes or Rotorua will probably be one, as well as many others. But when we get to that point, we would be keen to discuss that further.
Cool. I guess what I would encourage is that we get that feedback from the public. So we've heard it from a couple of people, but the stronger that voice, the easier it is for us, I guess, to get it over the line. Yeah. So, because there will be the alternative voice that comes up and say, but I want to trout fish in Okatoni.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
If we were to like develop a survey or something regarding the tapu, is it okay in that format? Or should we try to ask?
Because we've done that before.
Yeah. Yes, in any format we have to give it to us.
Okay, Councillor Brown, then William.
Chair, so can we just go back to the one where you showed some red? Could you just explain that a little bit more for me? I'm a bit slow on some of these
Okay,
things.
so this is so our draft water quantity, this is not entirely my area, limits for low flow. So we're required to set a minimum flow of water. So when you take water out of the stream, the stream as well, but also when it's summertime, you also have low flows. So it's setting the amount of water, our plan change will set out the amount of water that can be taken from the stream, but also when minimum flows need to be managed and takes limited.
So I'm sure there's solid science behind that assessment to make that assessment.
Yes. So it's based on the habitat requirements of certain fish species. And so in Rotorua, it's quite often native fish species, but you also have trout that are a significant value in this area. And so trout have a higher flow demand than our native fish species. So one of the assessments District Council will be doing is about how the water takes affect fish habitat.
So we put trout ahead of
Correct.
taking water for.
Well, that will be considered under this process. Yeah.
Do we think that's right? Must be, I guess. Privileged trout.
Trout do have a certain level of protection under the RMA and under the NPSFM, but that's why everyone is encouraged to have their say in this process.
Okay.
That's the trout.
Thank you.
Yes, the chair, just, the freshwater farm plans, the minimum standard, what is that?
Okay, so under the freshwater farm plans, the central government
Oh,
guidance.
so there's guidance from.
Well, that's one, and we can include extra bits and pieces. So under the freshwater farm plans, any farm that's over sort of 20 hectares has to identify their risks on farm and actions to mitigate those risks. So they've got to identify their waterways, whether they're fenced, all of those sorts of things. And then things that we're looking at might be like a nitrogen limit for how much fertilizer they can put on per year, or about those steep slopes, whether they have to manage stock or limit stock on a certain slope, or riparian setbacks of smaller streams that aren't required by the central government regulations. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch. Welcome to get more information if you came to our.
Right, Councillor Winters. Just further to Mediana's question about farm plans. I think across the Bay of Plenty, we've got to have, there's about 3,000 farm plans coming into the regional council, and they have to be audited, they have to be certified, they have to be reviewed every 5 years. So for us, this is a massive work stream coming onto our plate that's going to be rolled over every 5 years. And if you want a job, you know, get on board in terms of being a certified or auditor for farm plans, because this is where it's at.
Yeah.
And I would encourage TOLT to be at the forefront of this as well, because this is massive for our work program, regional council work program.
You might want to talk to the chair of Arawa, as they've got a contract to be an auditor on that in terms of engagement and actually filtering the engagement processes and auditing in that particular space. So they've already been signed off that particular contract to be an auditor in that space. So that's pretty close to home.
Oh, and one last note, because it came up earlier from Bill, I think. We were talking about meeting our targets and those sorts of things. So this plan change is about those TLI targets, but it's also much broader than that. There's a whole bunch of attributes that we have to measure under the NDSFM, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the ones that make up the TLI, and a whole bunch of extras for the E. coli. So the management options we come up with are our attempt to meet those targets. Yeah.
That's great. It's great to be starting to look at those wider criteria.
Yeah, and if anyone else has attributes that they want to provide to us for cultural values, then we are happy to receive those.
Any final questions or comments?
Happy to receive Jim's report.
Been moved by Councillor Winters, and I will seconder. Councillor Brown, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. That brings us to, thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. That brings us to the end of our thing. Te Taru, can I ask you now?
Oh, can I just do one more thing, Mr. Chairman? Our presenter this morning, can you write a letter of thanks to him?
Sure.
And that we didn't give him an answer, but can it be referred to Chris's tag, whatever you call yourselves now, for advisement or whatever you're going to do with it, Chris? But I think him taking 6 weeks out of his time frame to come up with that, that deserves our recognition in terms of a vote of thanks or something like that. And I'm happy to move in that direction, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you know, perhaps a response on why not, if not, and I suspect it's not, but you know, it's a weighing up cost versus reward. So, but yeah, I agree with Councillor.
Do we need to formally resolve that?
No, it's just a start action.
Yep. Okay, noted.
Yeah. But you do good letters, Mr. Chairman. I've seen some.
Okay, fine. We'll follow that up, but I totally agree that we need to acknowledge the work that he's put in. And then the innovative thinking. Right. Councillor White, can I ask you to do our closing karakia?
Tēnā koe, te kina me koe te puki nei me koe te puki ngā kautoko ngā mino ka hapuri hui mai nei tēnei rā. Kei te atu kia kau. Mihana ki a koe, Tina, mō te tūranga hau acting, mō tēnei kaunihira, a kei te miha tu kia koe. Nō reira, kei noi tātou. Kia tau kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou eriki a hukarai. Kei te Arawa te atua, me te whiwinga taihitanga ki te wairua.